Here we go with a 2022 mock fantasy football draft. Now, for our Gozilla Media people, we are going to show the full generated mock draft order. So we're about to pull this up on the split screen here. For our audio side, you're going to see a bunch of teams. You're not going to hear it. You're not going to see it, but you're going to see it on the side for our visual side of all the teams that are there. 14 teams, but we're going to do a 12-team mock draft, standard scoring, standard lineup, half-point PPR, all that stuff. So mock draft coming. Before we get to it, you're going for a championship this year. You want the ring. You want the title. Before you actually get that title in December, make sure to take care of her at Lily and David Fine Jewelers, Route 50, the Shops of Will. We're telling you this, that if you win a fantasy football championship because of this mock draft, at least support the people that make this podcast possible. Walk in and be like, yo, they helped me win this year. Lily and David Fine Jewelers, a family-owned and operated business. They're going to help you find what she's looking for. The engagement ring, the wedding band. If you're already married, already engaged, don't forget about the holidays and the anniversaries where you can always take care of her. Bring her in. Say what's up to Alyssa. Say what's up to David, Tammy, the whole crew in there. They want to make sure that she is taken care of and you get compliments for years to come. And you're spending 6 hours watching Red Zone wondering why your wife isn't yelling at you. You're going to realize Lily and David Fine Jewelers took care of me. Lily and David Fine Jewelers. Stop in. Tell me you heard about it from We Talk Fantasy, Gozilla Media. Okay, we are pulling up the 14 teams. Go ahead, Chet.
I'll say as Goz pulls up the 14 teams, I would just like to note, we taped a bunch of these to get you ready for your fantasy football season, get you ready for your draft. I will say I did not make my Zach Wilson deep sleeper pick. That was before the injury. So anybody was like, wow, Chet is sipping some weird Kool-Aid. We banged out a bunch of these. That was right before the injury. So instead of him being a deep sleeper, just sleep on Zach Wilson this year.
Dude, you were on fire with those. You made a Meet the Fockers reference. Oh, loving it.
Very good.
There you go.
Nice stuff. So this list, why it's set up like this in the order, it's how everybody finished last year in the Gozilla Media League. So Chet's at 3. Kyle Ray's taking over for Matt Woods, who is now with Team Hooters at 2. I'm at 7. All right, enough dragging it on. Let's generate the order.
Oh, man,
3.
hold on. I got to brace myself.
Okay.
Oh, God. Oh, Goz gets 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Okay, so that's first year in the league, guys. You give me 12.
Oh, man. 9.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. So there it is. I'm going to pull this off the board. I have the list next to me here. I just took a picture on my phone. So everyone saw that. That is not rigged. I now have the number 1 pick.
Hey, you know what's awesome about that? Is now we're going to be doing a mock draft of 12 teams, and we predetermined that Goz has the top pick. So now we get to get all of your intel. Goz is one of those guys. If you didn't know this about Goz, which if you know Goz, you do know, that he has a Heisman pick every year. And he does not reveal his pick. You could give him $1 million, and he will not tell you who he voted for until after the announcement.
Him voting for Aiden.
Now we get some insight before the draft of who Goz thinks should be number 1 in a. Is this half-point PPR?
Half-point PPR. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna get my popcorn ready for this.
All right, so here's my thought process here now with the number 1 pick. Let's get this out of the way. At some point during this, you guys can mention whenever you feel the best about it. I know it's a given. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm on an island of this. This is the pick that you want. The most champions come from the number 1 pick. And you want the number 1 pick in a fantasy football draft because you get to pick who you want on your team first. You get to pick arguably the best player. So if I ever got to pick where I wanted to be in an order of any fantasy football draft, I know people get preference sometimes. I would always pick 1. And here I am, very excited that I have the number 1 pick. Okay, now with that being said, we've done a few projections here with quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends of who should go here at 1. I'm between 3 people. I won't say them all because I don't want to steal your guys' thunder with your 2 and 3 coming up. But let's just make it quick. I would go with Jonathan Taylor unless an injury happens. The number 1 running back, the most productive player last season. I would say Jonathan Taylor would be my pick here with the number 1 pick. In any style of format, Jonathan Taylor would be my pick here.
I think that's a very safe pick. He was the beast of last year. He's young. He doesn't have the injury history. We've talked about that in previous podcasts. I think that's a very solid, safe pick. For pick number 2, which is going to go to me. So we're going to kind of go in a circle here if you're watching on the video side. So I'll go next, then Kyle, then we'll keep the circle going. At number 2, in most years, I can't think of a recent year where you wouldn't also go running back, unless there's just a freak star receiver. So I'm going to keep that trend going, and I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey, which I think he is in the conversation of being number 1 again. I know Kyle doesn't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole. But even in the games he did play last year, those finishes were amazing. It was like 1-3, 2-1. And he didn't even score touchdowns in those games. That's just how amazing his pass catching ability is. He is starting this season fully healthy. It's not like he's coming off of a major injury. It's not a reconstructive knee or an Achilles. He just had an injury that nagged him last year. So we all know what he can do out of the backfield when he catches the ball. And you can't put a price tag on how great that is. And whether it's full point PPR or half point, I like CMC at number 2.
This should be the scenario in every draft, with the exception of me picking at 1 or 2, or excuse me, 2, because my number 1 pick would be Jonathan Taylor, 110%. So I'm actually breaking it. We just got done recording a podcast a little while ago. I'm going Justin Jefferson at number 3. The value of Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, this year is going to be through the roof with the new offensive coordinator, with my thoughts on Kirk Cousins this year. Justin Jefferson is ungodly talented. Chet nailed that rookie sensation right on the head. Justin Jefferson, number 3. I will take him over Eckler this year, over King Henry, and over Cooper Kupp all every day of the week right now.
I know we're moving faster, but I got to put a pause on this real quick. I want to go back to Chet's pick at 2. I'm very surprised Chet didn't take Jefferson. Are you as well, Kyle? Did you think he was going to take Jefferson at 2 because of how much he's loved him over the past few years?
I'm not, and the only reason I say that is because when you are in this position, you have to have a burning passion like my dumbass to not pick Christian McCaffrey in that spot. If Christian McCaffrey is healthy, he's the number 1, number 2 number 2 and number 2 fantasy football player of the year. He gets too many passes out of the backfield. He's way too explosive. He's powerful. Overall, he is probably the most complete player in the NFL. Now, it's all about the injuries. I think when you have those 1 or 2, those are the right picks. Like I said, I'm staying away from him just because injuries always scare me. It's always something that I factor into fantasy football when I'm trying to be competitive, specifically with a first or second pick. I want my first round pick to last. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I also wouldn't have sat there with my jaw on the floor if he picked Jefferson, to be 100% honest.
So the reason that I go running back so early, and then there's different strategies here, but especially with those top early picks, and if you're in a 12 or in what's going to happen in our Gozilla a Gozilla league, 14 teams, if you don't go running back in that spot, the next turnaround on a snake, you could already be at the tail end of RB2s. You could be looking at, questionable production for your RB1. So to have a surefire thing, while granted injuries do happen, and it's really hard to predict which guys are going to go down, even though McCaffrey's dealt with those the last 2 years now. Just not having to worry about it. I think there's just so much depth at wide receiver where I know I can get some really good wide receiver talent at the turn. Guys like Keenan Allen, guys like Mike Evans, guys that I'm really confident can produce at a high level. At the running back position, it quickly dries up. So I think when you have that early opportunity to lock it up, you go for it.
And to your point, Chet, the 3rd pick is the only spot that I think is 1 and 2. You're not safe to not grab a running back. 3, there's 1 running back that's an RB1 left on the board on the turn, and that's going to be Aaron Jones more than likely.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
2 things to add here. 1, if you're listening or watching, don't forget below we've time-stamped your picks. So if you're going to scroll forward, all we ask, if you're going to scroll to be selfish, to make sure to support these sponsors. I thought this was going to be later, but Johnstone Supplying Troy here's the 4th pick. And I said, whenever Johnstone popped up, I was going to give them a shout out. So here they are earlier in the podcast than I thought. That's right. A little earlier than I thought. So 518-272-5922. AC units, furnaces, boilers, whatever it might be. Johnstone Supplying Troy. As you can see, one of our proud sponsors are here. We Talk Fantasy, a part of our league, wants to continue to help you in the Capital Region. They can do it. whatever it is, those summer projects that you're working on. If you love fantasy football, stop in and talk to the guys, man. Fish and Kev and George, man, he's a big sports fan. Say what's up to those guys, 6th Avenue and Troy. Check them out on Facebook as well. Johnstone Supply NY. Talk some trash to them. Be like, we're going to beat you this year. I think your team stinks. We'll have the crew over at Johnstone post their team and let us know what you think of them. What we know when you go inside at 6th Avenue, they're going to help you out. Johnstone Supply in Troy. Now, an interesting scenario here because our guy Tom, who's recently left Johnstone, is representing Johnstone in our fantasy league. So it's a little awkward scenario, but I know he's a Titan fan. I know how badly he wanted Derrick Henry last year, and I actually feel like that's the best pick here. Derrick Henry at one point last year got hurt and was still projected to be the best running back leader after like 2 months of missing. It's too hard for me to pass on Derrick Henry. I would take Derrick Henry here at the 4th spot.
Yeah, we texted about that not that long ago of like, are we fooling ourselves again by sleeping on the king? It's just because he's not a pass catching threat, but he doesn't have to be because he's that good. So I think you're getting a lot of great value there at number 4. At 5,
real quick, Chet, before we jump to 5, if we're not in any sort of PPR format, is Derrick Henry the number 1 pick, or is it still Jay Taylor?
I think he goes up to 2.
You still think Taylor's the more beneficial pick?
Yeah, I think they're similar in the sense of they rely heavily on their rushing attempts, and right now Taylor's just younger and is coming off just a better year.
That's the key, age. And as great as Derrick Henry is, age is what scares me.
Yep, and you have no concerns there with JT. So now I'm going at pick number 5 here, and this is where you start looking. Oh man, can I get Cooper Kupp, who was your guys' fantasy MVP a year ago? Hard to turn that down, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go with Najee Harris, who I think also has an opportunity to be in the RB1 overall conversation. Complete workhorse, no competition in his backfield. That's getting rarer and rarer in fantasy football. Similar to JT, this is only his 2nd year. He's a young guy. He's got the fresh legs, and he's a pass catcher. With whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, he's going to get a lot of targets, man. They're going to try to make it simple for those guys. Those quarterbacks are not gunslingers. It's going to be a lot of screens. It's going to be a lot of outs for him out of the backfield. So I think he's going to have – you're looking at 25, 30 touches a game for a guy like Najee Harris.
This is really hard for me as a fantasy football manager because when I'm in this spot, there's a guy that I like really, really well that I want to go get. But me managing 4 teams right now, I don't think I do it. I think I try to hold, and as a Hodor used to say, hold it on. I think I got to go Eckler here at 6.
Whoa!
I think I do. I'm stuck. I'm toying between Eckler and Cook. And I think the Vikings are going to be really, really explosive. You guys heard my takes on Dalvin Cook this year for him being one of my top running backs this year. I think I got to go Eckler at 6. I think it's a really safe spot to go Eckler at 6. I think he's gonna get some of those receptions. It's kind of the run game. It's kind of his efficiency in terms of how much he's playing on the field. I will go with Eckler at 6.
Looking at our top 6, are we collectively surprised at the lack of receivers, namely Cooper Kupp?
Not necessarily.
Wow.
I think what we talk about in the running back episode are like if once you get to that 5 or 6, that it starts to, then you're going to see the wide receivers fly.
You could make an argument that Kupp should have gone as high as 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here, and you know what though? I'm glad it kind of Chad, I'm glad you set this up because this kind of leads to this point. And to you guys, how you feel about this? If I got to excluding 1, it's funny how it works out that I'm at 7 here. This is the pick you want in 2022 in the first round. If you could pick any pick, not 1, excluding it, you want the 7th overall pick this year in drafts because look at what just happened here. If you've got the 7th pick, you are either going to get Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, all those guys we just listed. You are guaranteed to get one of those really good players at 7. Now, depending on what you want to do at 8, you could have one of those guys fall back, but 7 is without question to me the best spot to have this year in the first round because of that talent that just happened. Cooper Kupp is my pick here, by the way.
Yeah,
I would take him, but that is the best pick for me to have in the first round. If you get 7 in your draft, be very excited.
If you're an 8, be very excited.
At 8, it can be in the conversation too. Yeah, for sure.
The only part about when you're in the middle that annoys me as a fantasy manager is it's really hard to plan ahead in the next, coming rounds. Like you have your guys circled, and then it's just that painful waiting of, is he going to make it for the next X amount of picks? Because you just have a lot of cushion between picks. It's hard to get a rhythm of how the draft's going to go. And then you fall into that terrible draft of every guy you want gets picked a pick before you, or 2 pick. And you're just like, you can never get the guy you want sometimes when you're stuck in the middle. At 8, I would feel really good if this is how things, shook out. And I'd be happy to take Dalvin Cook at number 8. I think another guy who's pretty frequently in the conversation of being an RB1. I believe 2 years ago he was RB1.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I guess it was King Henry 2 years ago. He was, he was right
close. Yeah.
He might have been RB2 like back-to-back years. Like Dalvin's been up there, and he took a step back last year. He got banged up, got nicked up, had a touchdown regression. Just still a super talented guy. And Minnesota, even though they
gets you every time.
I hate it.
Kyle tweeted again. Even though Justin Jefferson is equally as fantasy superstar as Dalvin Cook is, that offense really does start with Dalvin in the backfield. So I'd be thrilled at number 8 to get a surefire RB1 in that spot.
So I'm actually really happy now that I held off on this guy because he came right around to me. If I'm at 9, I'm not taking Chase. I'm not taking Mixon. I'm not taking Adams. I'm not taking Diggs. I'm actually jumping all the way down. Well, actually, technically, he's above Diggs. Give me DeAndre Swift, number 9. I think DeAndre is poised to have a big year. I'm willing to, like I said, at that 6 spot, I think I'd be willing to reach if you read the room and say the first 5 picks were running backs. And all of a sudden, some of those running backs are getting scary close. And all of a sudden, you feel that rush that everybody's going running back. I love DeAndre Swift this year. So I'll take him at number 9.
It's very interesting you brought up Swift there, because I was going to flip around, and again, math adds for me here. Chase is the pick, so I'll just tell you I'm taking Chase here at 10. But if I was in that spot and you had taken Chase, I would have struggled at 10 because you've got people like Chubb, Swift, Zeke, Devontae, right? Like there's like 7 guys you can make an argument here with 10. So guess what? I'm going to let Chet figure that out at 11 instead. I would take Chase here, but this is where it gets a lot more difficult in the draft here. And this 11 and 10 spot is very tough.
And this is where I actually prefer being at the end of drafts. I think 14, it gets tough because then you're missing out on the premier talent. 10-team leagues and 12-team leagues, I like being near the end because now I can look at the big board. I only have one person to worry about who has back-to-back picks, whether it's 10-11 or in this case 12-13. So I can kind of be like, all right, who are they going to be targeting and who can I be, make sure that I get at the turn? And typically in this situation, I like going based on the talent. I like go best on the board, but I usually go either wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. I want to get both of those locked up. In this case, at pick number 11. Oh man, this is
the hardest spot in the whole draft.
This is where you're staring at the clock ticking and you really start to panic as I'm doing right now. Oh man, does this hurt? I have some question marks at some of the running backs that are currently on the board. So I'm going to go a little bit safer. I'm going to go Devontae Adams.
Yeah. You just made my pick a lot easier at 12 for me. I'm going Diggs. I'm jumping Mixon. I'm going Diggs.
So how about that? 3 receivers to end the first round. I like it.
Yep.
Let me go back to Chet there. Chet, were you between Diggs and Adams?
No, I prefer Adams over Diggs. I think he's just, in my opinion, he's better, and I think he's on a worse team that's going to have to throw it more. I like the Raiders as a team. I just think they're in a really tough division. They're going to be in a lot of tight games that they're going to have to chuck it a lot, and they just paid him a boatload of money. I like Hunter Renfrow, but I don't think it's a huge competition for targets. So I just prefer Adams over Diggs. No, I got my eye on Alvin Kamara. It's like it sounds like the suspension is going to get pushed. It's a guy who's also going to get a lot of targets and a lot of receptions, and there's a lot of value there in PPR. So passing on a running back there, I just kind of like some of those, the middle of that RB pack better. So make sure I lock up my wide receiver, and then I know at the turn I'm going to get a pick at another good running back.
Go ahead, guys. That was exactly my point. I agree.
Exactly, right? Like all three of us felt the same way. This is where it comes down to the style of how big your league is, because if you are a 13, 14, even 15, 16 team league, at this point, it's got to be running back because of how big of a drop off it's about to be, and you're not going to touch one. You could consider quarterback in bigger leagues here. Like this is where you're not going to get a chance if you're dying to get Allen or Mahomes. This is where you got to think about it, because we're doing a 12-team mock here. And I'm up, right? There's this 13 for me here in the second round.
No, it's going to be Kyle again.
Oh, yeah, Kyle, thank you. That's right. That's right.
Take it back, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm easily going to go Kamara here.
Yeah.
Kamara
is a nice combo.
And the confidence will grow as we get closer to the season. Obviously, we all feel the suspension is going to get pushed off. But as the season comes on and he's not suspended, I got Kamara. I just like him better. Nick Chubb, especially after the Watson announcement for 11 games, you don't know what you're going to get out of the Cleveland Browns. I still love Chubb. Obviously, he's one of my favorite running backs in the NFL. I do like Mixon. I'm very high on Mixon. Just how do I pass up on Alvin Kamara as a second-round pick right now? And maybe we're doing more disrespect to Joe Mixon again this year. He's going to blow our socks off again. I'm still haunted over the 2 years that I grabbed him and he didn't do squash for me. So shout out Matt Davis, our designer. But I think I got to go here with Kamara. You got Barkley, you got Jones. After that, it's a drop off. I think this is the critical point for you to grab your running backs if you're in these 12, or these 13, 14, 15 point.
I agree with you, Kyle, and I'm going to completely contradict what I said just a few moments ago, that I like to do the stack. I guess it's the opposite of a stack. You want to do running back, wide receiver, running back. I'm going to go full steam ahead at wide receiver and go CeeDee Lamb.
I don't hate that at all.
So you're having Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb. You don't have to worry about wide receiver until way late in this draft. Like you're set at the wide receiver position. And those are two of the best. CeeDee Lamb, dude, talk about a guy that is going to be in the mix, in my opinion, with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Cooper Kupp. Like he's going to be in the chase right now for top receiver. If he can take that next step with Amari Cooper now gone, like we're talking about a Pro Bowl guy is now off your team, and you get to step into that for sure. Number one with Dak, CD could be poised for a huge year this year.
So with CeeDee Lamb coming off the board here and Dak Prescott always picking up big numbers, I'm at 15. I would go with Nick Chubb, who's still on the board. I know Kyle Ray just mentioned a bunch of stuff that involves the Browns and some inconsistency potentially with that offense. Kareem Hunt holding out. But if I get Hunt out of the backfield and I get a worse quarterback play and they got to figure out ways to move the football, I'll take Nick Chubb right there because he's been good for year after year. And I like him in the backfield. So I would go with Nick Chubb right there.
I guess that makes my pick pretty easy.
That's
I gotta
right.
I gotta go Mixon now. By far the best running back available on the board when you look at Javonte, Barkley, Jones, Fournette. He is going to be the backfield. There's not much competition behind him. We'll see what it looks like, that offense looks like. But I'm going to bite my tongue a little bit. He should be poised for a better year behind a better offensive line before. The only thing I question, I mentioned it during the quarterbacks portion, everybody's got film now on what that Joe Burrow offense looks like. Everybody knows what it's going to look like. That offense is set with Jamar, Higgins, Mixon. It's all there. There's tons of film out there. So, but the offensive line is undeniably better this year, and that was by far their Achilles heel last year. So let's see if Mixon can replicate, or if not, do a little bit better than he did last year.
I like it. I'm going to copy Kyle and stack mine as well. So this is my 8th pick in the first round with Dalvin Cook, and I'm going to take Aaron Jones off the board here. So I'm going to go RB. Yes, we saw the emergence of A.J. Dillon last year, and he was beast mode down the stretch. But it goes back in one of our previous episodes talking about the void left by Devontae Adams. I don't think all the receivers are going to take those targets. I think there's going to be an increase in target share for Aaron Jones out of the backfield. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think both running backs are going to be viable. Dylan starting the season more of a flex play, and I like Aaron Jones filling my RB2 early.
I have to be selfish and admit that I was hoping that for my team in Gozilla Media, which could still happen, I was hoping he's going to get a little later in the second round and then wrap around with him at the bottom. But
not in a 14-team league, my guy.
No. All right, so I'm going to wide receiver here for this pick, and maybe he'll be a running back at some points this season. Deebo Samuel's still on the board, and I like the potential here. I know, right? Deebo and Trey Lance and how good that offense can be. So look, I'm not a huge Trey Lance fan, but fantasy-wise and Shanahan and the coaching staff, I talk about them all the time here. I like Deebo Samuel at this pick here, deeper into the second round.
Oof.
That's a good pick.
This is tough. This is a hard part. I think I'm extremely confident and comfortable going Kelsey here. I'm late in the second round. I don't love the rest of the depth, but I'm getting the bona fide number one tight end. With less competition with Hill, I think I got to go Kelsey here. I do not like Javonte Williams. I'm not touching him until late third. Saquon, I think, is a good pick, but I think I'm going to need a lot more production out of Kelsey, and you're rolling the dice a little bit with Barkley. Give me Trav here.
Wow. Over Mark Andrews. Do you think Travis Kelce is still the guy?
I do believe it. I know he's older. I know everything in terms of his production has slightly decreased over the last, what was that stat we shared, like 4 years? He's slowly started to see a decline, but there's not the other weapons there that I'm sitting there going like, oh, shoot, what about this guy? You got Juju. You got Sky Moore, but I still think Patrick Mahomes is going to go to his guy in Travis Kelce in the red zone.
Yeah, no, he's probably going to prove you right because he usually does that. So I had Najee Harris at this pick in the first round as we're now getting kind of later here in the second. Still some pretty solid RB potential on the board at this point in the draft. But I'm going to go wide receiver here, and I'm going to take Keenan Allen. And I'm going to be pretty happy with that.
I love that pick.
Just the Justin Herbert connection there. Like another guy that's super consistent. You don't really have to worry about him ever. He's going to get the targets. He's great in the red zone. He's not the flashiest anymore. Like he's not that burn you down the field. He's not going to, take the top off, but you're talking about 6 to 10 receptions a game, chance to go over a hundo and a touchdown. Like
super underrated.
And has a great connection with Herbert.
Yep.
And a really good offense in a division that's going to be a lot of shootouts. So yeah, give me Keenan Allen there to go paired with Najee Harris.
Love the pick, and this is my favorite part of fantasy drafts when that player goes one pick ahead of you and you're pissed and you watch somebody's reaction. I actually had Keenan Allen down on my sheet here. Didn't think you'd take him, and I had to just scratch him off. Okay, so I don't like that you took Keenan Allen because now at this pick here, you mentioned that this team has Derrick Henry already. So how do we handle this? Do we go for another touchdown vulture? Do we go with another big back? Because there's 3 inconsistent backs for me on the board here. But Mark Andrews is also on the board. And this is what I'm thinking, because you could argue it's the second best tight end and like the 10th best running back.
Mm-hmm.
I would go with Zeke here. I don't love the pick. I'm not thrilled by it, but I would go with Zeke just because of the stuff we mentioned on a previous episode. He's in a contract season. He has a chance to redefine his career. If Dallas is good, I would go with Zeke Elliott here, and I'm not thrilled by that pick.
Wow.
So this is my third round. This is my third pick. So I have this is Jefferson, right?
Correct.
Oh boy. I think I am gonna go. I'm stuck between Barkley and Cam Akers. I'm gonna roll the dice with Barkley. I don't love it. Don't hate it. I know. I think he's poised for a huge year if he can be the flashes of Saquon Barkley that he can be. He's had a great camp. It's again, we're saying the exact same thing about the Giants that we said last year. Danny Dimes, can you at least be just an average, not above that, just an average quarterback to give the guy a chance to become the Saquon Barkley that we fell in love with his rookie year?
Yep, same spot. It's a magic, right? A top 5 pick not too long ago, and now we're about these guys in the bottom of a second.
Yeah, this is where it's just
tough.
It's surprising at how, man, you you would think you'd be in a good spot this early in the draft, but there's some guys that just, you have question marks, man. We talked about Javonte still in a timeshare with Melvin Gordon. Leonard Fournette's fat. James Conner, like, is he real? So on this position, I already have Christian McCaffrey on this spot here. Mark Andrews is super enticing. Like, I don't think if I'm picking here at number, actually, I'd be picking early in the third.
Yeah.
So look at this. I think Mark Andrews could be there in the early third. Late third, gone. He's gone. He's not making it. He's not going to survive the third round, in my opinion. So that's where I'm like, all right, can I bank on getting Mark Andrews in the third? And in that case, at number 2 here, or the second to last pick, the penultimate pick, if you will, of the second round.
Can I guess your pick?
Go ahead.
Are you going Mike Evans?
I am going Mike Evans.
Boom, baby.
What a pick, Kyle, or what a prediction. Yeah. And if you listen to our previous episodes, make sure you download the podcast. I think we're super underrated. I think he's too low in these drafts. I think we're discriminating against a guy who's been, I mean, how many 1,000-yard seasons in a row? 7?
Something like that.
I think he has 7,000-yard seasons to start his career. Like, we're disrespecting how consistent and good Mike Evans has been, and he still has Tom Brady, who somehow throws still one of the best footballs, one of the best deep balls in the game. So I feel really good about getting Mike Evans there late in the second.
Can we also talk about the touchdown production of Evans? Like,
oh my gosh, like, it's just like every week.
The definition of a red zone threat is Mike Evans.
Right.
Here's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to close out the round 2. So I'm going to do my final pick. And while I'm talking, you guys look at your team if you can. If you wrote down who you have on your roster or have an idea of your strategy, let's do like a 3 or 4 minute recap for some people of how you went through that idea. For our people down below, we stopped at 22 for the time. So we just mentioned Mark Andrews. Here's a really important thing to remember here, especially if you're picking at the bottom or the top of a round. If you're in a keeper league, remember, take the player you like more with the pick after, because that keeper stuff plays a huge factor. There's your biggest advantage for keeper leagues, to make sure you use that lower round pick. Trust me, it matters. So I would probably go Fournette and Andrews is what I would probably do there. Get another running back, even though he is fat, and then get another tight end who's really productive. So that's what I do there. So you guys look at your teams, and while we do that, let's talk about Mohawk Honda. If you're looking for an upgrade, maybe after the round 3 of your team in fantasy, you can't get an upgrade. You're stuck with them. You're not that way with your vehicle. Mohawk Honda wants to get you into a ride that you're going to love for the future. And they can do that by stopping over to Glenville, New York. You can do that by stopping over to Glenville, New York, and trade in your vehicle for a new ride. Shout out to everybody over there. Andy Gelcher, Cam McKenna, Brian McKenna, Greg Johnson, always shooting videos, man. Greg Johnson's doing a bunch of stuff out there. The Harridan family and more, I know from experience. Mohawk Honda, the vehicle, the 2022 Pilot EXLs in my driveway. Love driving around the capital region. My wife does too, with her sisters and in-laws. That's okay. We got room, baby seats, and more. They'll make sure it fits your budget, your lifestyle, your new ride. Work with people you can trust during the car buying experience. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. All right, looking at your guys' strategy, I'm going to kind of open this up. Is there something that surprised you? Is there a pick you really liked? Just kind of open forum after seeing 2 rounds of this mock draft. What jumped out to you about team building, player expectation, what people can expect for their drafts coming up watching this episode?
I'm pleasantly shocked with myself at how heavily I went running back. I think I said on an earlier podcast that, or at least I know I said it to you guys, this is a draft where I could see myself passing on some of these running backs, that low tier 2, tier 3, and waiting until that 4th or 5th round to get a running back. I mean, when you look at it, Saquon, Kamara, Swift, Mixon, Eckler, all on those 4 teams that I went with. I'm a little surprised at my strategy. I'm not going to lie. Like, that didn't play out how I thought, how I just in my head kind of played some of the situations out. And again, I think it's really tough when we're doing a format like this, but it's also really eye-opening because you have that best available pick in your own mindset. And I just went completely against the grain on what my own mindset was going to be going into a draft where I had 4 picks versus 1. So
Kyle's having an internal battle.
Battling of Davids.
I love it. Yeah, no, I think what stood out to me the most, and it's funny because I've already done mocks, but I've only been mocking in one position, because that's where of the leagues I'm in, the only one I already know my position. Well, now I know two. Previously, I only knew one spot. And so I just kept, hammering out that mock draft and toying with that. And it was always a similar position and a similar cluster of players that were available. When you do the whole picture and you're picking at completely different spots, the question marks that I have with a lot of this, top 24 players, and I guess if you want to expand it, because a lot of the guys that we left on the board that according to rankings should have already been picked. So I think I was surprised that a lot of guys that I already have kind of red line through them of I don't want you, but at what point does the value trump your concern? Like how late do you let a guy slide? Who the experts, and we consider ourselves experts, how other experts think are going to be better. Like, what am I missing that this guy is ranked so high? And so I think for us, and we were all kind of in agreement based on how we mocked, it is that tier 3 running back. It's the Fournette, it's the Javonte, it's the James Conner, Cam Akers. Those guys are going to be in the mix in a lot of second and third rounds. And we know how quickly running backs can go. Are you willing to continue to skip out on those guys? You got to play at least 2 running backs no matter what league you're in. So you got to figure out if you're passing on those guys, how much confidence do you have in the lower tiers, the Elijah Mitchells. A guy that I love is Travis Etienne. Those are the guys that, all right, if I'm going to pass on them early, I really got to make sure I get them late, and I might have to reach a couple rounds to do that.
That is the most fascinating part about this draft. I feel like we're going to get a little bit of pushback from Gozilla Media people, from some Dynasty Keeper League people that are going to say, you guys went too early on running backs, but we all kind of feel the same value of if it's not now, then when. And I think both of you guys had the same point too of, hey, if you've got 5 players you really don't want on your team, there's a chance that 5 other people in your league have that same mindset, and eventually someone is going to have to take them, like Chet just said. I'm going to say this probably for every podcast we do, and you guys are going to see this now competing against me in 2 leagues this year. One of my favorite phrases: don't fear the flex. I love that phrase because what's going to happen is, perfect example of this, you might have 2 running backs already on your team, and all of a sudden you get to the 4th round and a running back sitting there, you're like, he has to come off the board. He's the best player. He's been going for 8. I got to take him. He's going to be in my lineup. He's going to sit a little bit lower. But at some point, like all great fantasy football drafts, the plan goes out the window, and you have to respond to what's happening. If you go into a draft, they're going to be going wide receiver, running back, then you're going to miss on somebody who's great that's still on the board because you're too caught up in that. Adapt to what's happening. And I think we saw that happen in this mock draft.
Yeah, I think that's some advice that I'd give some people as it's a little different here because if you're in a typical draft, when guys get picked, they get taken off the board and everyone kind of shifts up, the list gets up and up and up. Don't feel pressured to take guys that you don't love. And I hope you guys watching this or listening to this saw that we had the internal battles because we saw the numbers and we saw the rankings, but Goz did it and Kyle going early on Zeke, according to the rankings, going early on Barkley, according to the rankings. Don't feel like when you're on the clock and you see what's the suggested pick that you feel that you ignore your own guts or your own instincts or your own research. Because, yeah, Barkley might be ranked 5 spots below James Conner, but they could be ranked literally like a hairline below. It's just small little details that someone thinks they're better. So if you think that Barkley's better or Zeke's better, go for it, man. Like that's how you want to build your team. You don't want to get to the end and realize you just trusted someone else's rankings and didn't listen to your own knowledge. So I think that's my advice to people is when you look at that, don't always focus on what they're telling you to draft. Focus on who you think is going to be the better player.
So the next, yes, one more, Chet. Go ahead.
One last thing. This is I always try to think of ways to improve fantasy football. We've had those discussions before. How can we change points? How can we change the rules? We made a rule change in our Dynasty League this year, going from 2 wide receiver positions to 3. And I'm really excited about it because I think it makes people it gives a little bit more power to wide receivers. I think it's a really deep position almost every year. And every year you have these guys stuck on your bench. which brings me to this point. I'm sure this exists. I'm not saying it's groundbreaking. I've never heard of it. I've never been a part of it. I have a feeling you guys are going to hate it, but just try to be open-minded. What do you think about a fantasy football league where there's no bench?
Ooh.
And here's the point, though, because you immediately start poking holes. Bye week players are allowed almost like an IR spot, so you don't have to drop buys, and you have unlimited IR spots.
I think there's one caveat to this. It will only work in auction leagues. I don't necessarily like that format if you're going to go with whoever lost and scored the lowest gets the first one, or that whole waiver pick priority. I don't think it's going to work in this scenario. Maybe it does. I could be wrong, but I think that would be cool in a salary cap kind of league. I do. That would be interesting.
Wouldn't it? Because and the reason that I had this thought was, it happens every year where you can have a loaded bench, or you have these projects, or some guys just draft and then never touch their team because they just have options on their bench. Like they have enough guys to fill bye weeks and injuries, and they just tinker with their lineup and never think about trading, never think about waiver wire moves. I'm not that guy. But I like the idea of the waiver wire being full of gold. Like imagine going into a week where Alan Lazard's on the waiver wire. You're just like, fuck. So am I going to drop? I don't know, like Hunter. I prefer Lazard over Hunter Renfrow. You know what I mean? Every week you're going to make a decision of dropping a good player for who you might think is a better player.
Think about it like this. That's a great point, because Alan Lazard's on the waiver wire. We have the exact same scenario that happened last year where Stephon Diggs starts out ungodly slow and was like wide receiver 29 after week 3 or 4. Do you drop Stephon Diggs for Alan Lazard?
That's what I'm saying.
Do you drop the a mid-tier, maybe like a Darnell Mooney, who has some of that potential, a good one.
That's a good one.
For like Gabe Davis, who popped off for 3 games in a row, and then all of a sudden, it could get interesting. I don't hate it. Like I said, I think it would work much better in an auction league, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's why I like it, because it rewards good managers. Because if you're competitive and you're updating your team, you should be rewarded for that. So I know that concept you're doing, like it's almost like a good real football team. If I got good players on my bench who can get on the field and I recruited these guys or signed them, I should benefit from that, which totally makes sense. Here's the problem why I would struggle in fantasy football with that idea. And when you said it, I'm like, why is there a bench actually? Like, why do we have a bench in fantasy? Well, the reason we have a bench is in case somebody gets injured. Like, right. Let's say you draft a team and 4 guys get injured. That didn't make you a worse manager. Your guys just got hurt. Like, you could go back.
I had the caveat, unlimited IR.
Yes. If it's unlimited IR, that is better.
I wouldn't force you to drop those guys and not have, automatically, if they're injured or if they're ruled out or IR, you're able to store them. And then you can bring in the replacements. And the second they're healthy, drop. You have to drop to make room for them.
So there's only one problem with this, and you just kind of mentioned, Chet, that just hit me. Game time decisions.
That's part of the game, baby. So of course they have to get ruled out at some point. But then the other thing that's cool about that, Kyle, let's say a guy plays in the mid games or the late games. There's going to be a lot of options. Like usually in a traditional league where the benches are full, if you go with a guy who's, you leave a game time decision guy and then maybe it's a big bye week and you didn't want to drop anyone, the options to fill that guy, if he does get ruled out, you're going with like a wide receiver 4 or you're going with a backup tight end. Like we've all been in that situation where it's like, man, my backup plan here is brutal. Like I'm lucky if I'm going to get a target or I'm lucky if I'm going to get a rush. So yeah, I think with people not being able to have those benches, wide receiver 2s are going to be available all over the place. Like you're going to have a good chance to actually hit on some of these, late guys.
Yeah, I find it hard that there's those. They're going to see how they're going in warm-ups. It looks like he's good to go, and then kickoff happens. Well, we just got news. Stephon Diggs is nursing that hamstring. He has been ruled out of the game, and it's like, what? So I guess that's where I would struggle with it. Like I feel like if that was the case and one of them was like one of those true like game time decisions, it would almost be like an automatic. If Gabe Davis is on the wire, you swap them, or if Isaiah McKenzie is, you swap them, something like that. But I see your other point. I don't know. It's
I think
interesting.
the other thing that I think would make it kind of cool, or it just be an interesting game of chess, is rookies. So we all have rookies that we love, right? Like the Chris Olaves, for Kyle, Kenneth Walker. Are you getting him in the draft? Are you starting him week 1 and just riding it? Because you have to make that decision. We all know you can lose fantasy football in the first month. You start off 0-4, that's a hard hole to get out of in a shortened. It's not the full length of a season. The playoffs start earlier. You have to make that decision of, do I love this rookie so much that he's in my week 1 lineup and I'm just riding it? Or are you going with the safer, be like, you know what? This guy's probably not going to be the best wide receiver for the second half of the season, but I know he's going to keep me in it early. Dude, I'm telling you, man, I think it would just make your gears just go. You can't, everyone, just stashes these guys and then eventually they hit. How big are your balls to hold on to some of those guys and play them every week when they struggle early? Like, think about, perfect example, guys. Jamar Chase would have gotten cut in this league. He would have been cut by week 2 or 3. You've just been like, I can't keep taking goose eggs out here. And then how bad would you feel when the guy picks him up off waivers and wins the championship?
The NFL.
Just a reminder, Chet, you're a new dad. Your heart wouldn't be able to handle that kind of league.
Oh, I'd be an unhealthy person.
Ray, you beat me to it because I was going to say it's always a Monday night finish would be hilarious because you'd have like 4 guys on the Monday night, like a random tight ends, your 17th guy on your roster, hoping he falls forward to win one. Oh, the Monday night games would be so much fun. All right, guys. The next time we likely might have a current episode, and all this is current depending on when your draft is. Again, this is all evergreen stuff. We're likely back in September to recap some drafts, talk about some things we noticed, and prepare for week 1 of the NFL year. So, guys, go win your leagues. We appreciate helping you for the situation coming up. Mock. We'll talk again soon.